This weird and unpredictable winter weather has made it hard to judge the conditions, like when you go high up in the Adirondack high peaks. And it's easy to underestimate those conditions. Unstable ice, heavy slush, and snow that make for tough conditions, which leads to more rescues. Forest rangers managed 2 rescues on neighboring peaks, both very remote, at the same time over the weekend. How they did it on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, March 6th. First up, an assemblyman who represents part of the North Country has announced that his young son has died. Assemblyman Robert Smullen said his son AJ was hit by a car when he was outside playing with friends in Niskayuna near Albany about 2 weeks ago. After the accident, Smullen said on Facebook that his son had sustained a traumatic brain injury and was in critical condition. The assemblyman posted again around 2:30 this morning, announcing that AJ had succumbed to his injuries. There's been an outpouring of sympathy and support from Smullen and his family, including from Governor Kathy Hochul and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Smullen represents the 118th Assembly District, which includes portions of the southern Adirondacks and the Mohawk Valley. Last month, St. Lawrence County's only assisted living facility announced it would be closing its doors. United Helpers says it's had to find new homes for 34 people living in its assisted living program in Canton. The company's independent living and skilled nursing programs on its Maplewood campus aren't affected. Catherine Wheeler reports the closure adds stress to the county's overburdened elder care system.
United Helpers says it was a difficult decision to close its assisted living facility in Canton, but there were a few factors making it hard to carry on.
This was really due to our low reimbursement rates, our increased cost, and staffing shortages.
Jordan Downing-Duke is United Helpers Assistant Director for Corporate Services.
All of those factors led to really an unsustainable model for United Helpers to be able to continue to operate our assisted living program in Canton.
The facility is scheduled to close in mid-May, and the closure exposes a systemic problem for the region's elder care system. Andrea Montgomery is the director of the St. Lawrence County Office for the Aging. She says she's been hearing about the same issues for years.
Absolutely. They are not getting reimbursed at a high enough rate, certainly not for the level of care that they have and the staffing. We've all had a ton of trouble since we've come out of COVID trying to recruit and retain staff.
United Helpers in Canton was St. Lawrence County's only assisted living facility, and Montgomery says this stage of care is really important. It's a step before higher levels of care, like a nursing home.
So not having that, puts these families in such a huge detriment of, well, what do we do? Mom or dad isn't safe at home, but I work full time. I can't be a full-time caregiver, and they need 24/7 care. They need, someone there to watch over them.
There are wait lists for the handful of nursing homes, and for people who want to stay in their own homes, Montgomery says there's a huge shortage of aides for in-home care. Montgomery says that leads to older residents having to leave the county for placement at any kind of facility.
And that's really hard on the families. Oftentimes they can't travel for regular visits. We've had someone go as far as just outside of New York City. Based on the care level they need, that was the closest facility that could help them.
Montgomery says the baby boomer generation is aging, and they'll need programs and services that are nearly impossible to find now. She says people and lawmakers should advocate for more state and federal funding for elder care because there just isn't enough now. Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio in Canton.
Forest rangers spent Saturday night on 2 separate rescues in the Adirondacks. Warm weather this winter has created difficult and dangerous conditions in the mountains for both hikers and rescuers. Our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell reports.
The first call came in around 2:45 on Saturday afternoon. A group of people were climbing up Saddleback Mountain, that's in the Adirondack High Peaks, when one of them fell near the summit. He dislocated his shoulder and fractured his leg. Audrey Emerson is one of the forest rangers who was on that rescue.
That part of the mountain is extremely steep, nearly vertical, and just huge broken boulders and, a sloped rock face that was all covered with glare ice and snow.
It's a 7-mile climb to the summit. The first wave of rangers reached the injured hiker after 8 p.m. One of them posted a video on Instagram showing nearly whiteout conditions. Emerson was part of the second wave of rangers to reach the group. By that time, she says, luckily the wind and snow had died down.
These conditions could have been much worse, so I was thinking in the back of my head, I'm thankful that it's not below zero. I'm thankful that the wind's not whipping right now and it's not snowing. And just, I kept thinking about all the things that could have been 10 times worse.
Still, rangers had to do a technical rope rescue to maneuver the injured man off the steep slope. As they prepared for that rescue, a second call came in. A hiker had fallen 30 feet while climbing Basin Mountain, just south of Saddleback. David Nally is a forest ranger who was on that rescue. Because the rescues were happening simultaneously, Nally says an incident commander coordinated both from the trailhead in Keene Valley.
As resources and rangers arrived, he assigned rangers and resources to either one of those rescues.
The Basin rescue was less technical, but Nally says it came with its own set of challenges. It's been warmer at lower elevations this winter, creating uncomfortable conditions for the rangers.
Sometimes a little bit of cold isn't a bad thing because at least things are dry. When it's wet snow, like everything's wet, and everything stays wet.
As a team of rangers over on Saddleback worked their way down the mountain, they too found wet, slushy snow and open water crossings. Audrey Emerson says that complicated the carryout.
The trails are just so narrow that when you're sliding them like we were, and you have people on either side kind of braking and steering, that if you step off of the packed portion of trail, you were sinking into waist deep snow post-holing because we didn't have snowshoes on, and that just drains your energy throughout the whole time.
This winter has been one of the warmest on record in the Adirondacks. David Nally says that makes it more difficult for hikers to know what conditions they might encounter when in the mountains.
If you're in lower elevations, you could have an afternoon right now that's 60 degrees and sunny, 50 degrees and sunny, and it's beautiful, and you could almost hike in a t-shirt. But then come evening, you're single digits and freezing temperatures. So it's a tough time to be out under these conditions.
The conditions in the Adirondacks and the variable weather this winter also may lead people to misjudge how long a hike could take them, which Emerson says is where some hikers get into trouble.
If you're planning your hike based on the conditions at the bottom and you think, oh, well, this is only going to take me a few hours, and then you get halfway up and you're too committed and stubborn and you realize this snow is really going to slow me down, then, your night might look a lot different than what you expected.
It might also look a lot different for the forest rangers called up to help lost or injured hikers. More than 30 rangers responded to the 2 overnight rescues on Saturday. It was daylight Sunday by the time everyone was out of the woods safely. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Alan Dunham of South Glens Falls and Evan Veenstra of Gananoque, Ontario. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.